Education isn't just about schools or exams, it's how a nation prepares for its future. In Singapore's early years, every classroom, every teacher, every lesson was part of building a society that could survive and thrive. That reminds me of Athena, goddess of wisdom and strategy. She sees the whole picture, guides with insight, and protects what matters most. Today, we'll hear from three voices who share their personal experiences and views on education. Let's begin.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Han Zong. I'm a self-taught naturalist. My passion is for wildlife conservation and sustainability. And I spend my time advocating for civic education and civil society in general as well.
Hi, I'm Jack Sim. I'm the founder of the World Toilet Organization. I started as a school failure on O level and went to do business and became Mr. Toilet, helping people get proper sanitation around the world.
So, hi, my name is Harry. I'm the co-founder of Remarkably. We're building an AI tutor to help teachers grade essay assignments faster. So what we realized is that unlike math or science-based subjects where you get like a set answer key where the teacher can use to mark the assignments, assignments like essays can take extremely long to grade. It's extremely subjective. And after talking to like hundreds of educators around the world, we actually found out that teachers spend a lot of time, like about 10 hours of their week per week, on grading these assignments. So what happens on the student side is that students are not getting enough feedback from the teacher because teachers don't have time. And these feedback are extremely delayed. And on the teacher side, teachers are stressed, overburdened. So we're building these AI tools to help teachers grade these assignments up to 7 times faster. And students actually seen about a 40% score increase in just 1 month because they are receiving much more personalized feedback. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you all my guests for introducing yourselves. Let's go back to the beginning. Singapore's early schools were about survival, training workers for a young economy. Hang Chong, as someone who's taught and also advocates for sustainability, how do you see education's role in those foundational years? And what has changed since?
I think one of the common sayings is that it actually takes a village to raise a kid. I don't think that has changed since. So it takes all stakeholders, be it the parents, the family, the relatives, not just the school. There are different learning environments. Some are homeschooled. Yeah, like myself, my parent actually sent me on to my aunt, and I being a curious kid, I was reading the Encyclopedia Britannica on my own actually, and so while I also didn't do well in school, I was in 2 so-called elite schools. But I found that actually learning how to learn probably set me on a path to where am I right now. It set me on a path where I haven't actually needed to apply for a job. I've always had people asking me to work for them. As Kaylee has mentioned, it's about how do we gain wisdom at the end of the day. Because knowledge is agnostic. It can be used for good, it can be used for bad. Yeah. So how do we actually build character? Yeah, in a world that is described as more volatile, perhaps uncertain, with ambiguity. Yeah, it's the challenge today.
I see. Thank you, Hang Chong. Harry, your company is creating AI tools that adapt to each teacher's grading style. What gaps in our current education system motivated you to start Remarkably?
So it's interesting because finding a gap is actually the key point of me building this startup. Is like how it started in the first place. Because I'm a serial entrepreneur. So before this, I actually built many other startups. Like some are in e-commerce space, some in Web3. And those never really took off. So I consider them a failure because we didn't start with the problem first. But like Kaylee mentioned just now, this one, we actually started by talking to educators. We found out that educators were saying they've been spending too much time on these redundant, repetitive grading tasks instead of actually in the classroom teaching the student. And I experienced this myself. So I'm actually still a student. I'm studying in the US right now. And writing these homeworks, writing essays is very close to me. It's very relatable. And I used to do this a lot back when I was in high school. And what happened is that I submit my essay assignments. It takes a month for the teacher to return my assignment to me, for me to get any feedback at all. And by the time I got my feedback, I kind of already forgot what I wrote because it's super delayed and I don't find these feedback relatable. So it's difficult for me to improve. Then I went to talk to my teacher, so I was like, can you mark it a little faster? And the teacher was like, I try my best, but it's just too busy. There's so much stuff to do. And it's not only you, because one class is like 30, 40 students. And sometimes the teacher has to teach multiple classes. That's like hundreds of essays to grade. And if say one essay takes 10 minutes or 15 minutes to grade, then a class of 50 students would take the teacher up to 12 hours to grade everything. So then I realized is that it's not that the teacher don't want to help, not that the teacher don't want to teach to provide the feedback, it's that they are actually stressed. Then I started talking to more teachers. I started talking to people from the public space, education institutions, the private tuition centers, private schools, international schools, schools beyond Singapore. So for anyone who's watching, we're in Singapore right now, but we're also talking to teachers beyond Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, people in China. And it's problem faced by teachers all around the world. And that's what motivated us to start. Because AI, I think it's something that we can definitely leverage to make teachers' life easier. A lot of people are doing, AI tutor to support the students, but we were thinking, how can we use the same tool to support the teachers that there's been always a lack of support of? Yeah.
Thank you, Harry. Jack, you've often spoken about dignity and infrastructure. What do you think about the early decades of Singapore's education? What do you think we sometimes overlook about the foundations that makes today's system possible?
I think in my generation, I'm born 1957, so I'm 68 now. In my generation, having a degree is very rare. And a lot of people actually learn how to do business. And if you look at people who are even earlier than me, like Far East Organization, Ng Teng Fong, or all the tycoons, they actually never went to university, but they did very well. So it doesn't mean that you go to an academic education and you'll be an educated person. You actually can educate yourself on the street and you can educate yourself with common sense. So a lot of people overlook education as, like, when I watch my mother haven't gone to school at all, start a beauty school and become the wedding beautician and started a lot of businesses. So when I was like 5, 6 years old, I actually went to mother's business school, right? And your environment around you will teach you a lot. And later on, I went on to fail in school and start 16 successful company. It's not like you bet 20 nowadays, you bet 20 and get one successful company. I started 16 and all 16 are very profitable. And then I retired at 40. And one of the things that I did was the Australian International School in Singapore with 3,500 students. Although I am a school failure and I also don't know how to run a school. So all I have to do is to employ a principal who runs the school from Australia. So entrepreneurship is a skill that today is very, very critical because a job creator is easier than a job seeker. As you can know, read in the newspaper, jobs are very rare now and it will get worse and worse. So I hope that students can learn soft skills like curiosity, the ability to ask questions. A lot of Singaporeans don't ask questions. And the courage to ask questions and the courage to defy the norm. And then the compassion to use this knowledge to do good. And the communication skill to convince people. And the community building, which require humility and collaboration. And then internal calmness, not to really get so irritated or offend people. So I think if they learn all these soft skills, what I call gumption, which I wrote in a book, the gumption of Mr. Toilet, then what will happen is that the schools can teach this soft skill. And when you have the soft skill, you can master all the technology and the hard skill, and you won't be replaced by it because you have a lot of exponential mindset. I use this to do things that are beyond my capability. So you can only achieve big things if you do things that you can't do, but you want to do. So you orchestrate and bring other people in and start to allocate jobs. And in the last 25 years, we brought proper sanitation and toilet to 2.5 billion people. And I think I could never have done that if I did it myself. Yeah.
Wow, that really shows that collaboration makes many things successful. Singapore's system has long been criticized for rote learning and exam-driven success. Jack, you've redefined what success means in unexpected ways, through toilets, through dignity. How should we think about redefining success in education?
I think success in education is that the person is actually learning without stress, actually loving how to learn. And I really know that everybody hates the exam system because learning should be something you enjoy very much, and you learn different things, and you cannot be tested for the same thing. For example, I saw a cartoon of a monkey, a penguin, a gorilla or whatever, and then you say, okay, to be fair, I got to test everybody how to climb up a tree. And so only the monkey will pass and everybody, the fish and everyone will fail, right? So I think that rote learning is so bad and it destroys the opportunity for all the rest who have other skills. So what I think success in education should be by doing, by creating the results, and by enjoying the process of learning rather than to test people based on rote learning. Because today with AI, you can get all the knowledge you want. You can chit-chat with the ChatGPT or Gemini, and you get lots of knowledge. So what's the point of testing people whether the British came in what year and Paramiswara came in what year? It's useless. So I think we have to teach people, first principle, the roots of inquiry, which will produce the genius in the people. We have to learn to unlock people rather than lock them up. Yeah.
That's so insightful. Harry, as someone building an AI grading platform, you're literally teaching machines how to give feedback like human educators. How do you see technology helping us move away from grades as success to a more holistic definition of learning?
I think it's like Jack or Mr. Toilet mentioned just now. It's like you can't give the same test to everyone because, the monkey only will pass the tree climbing test. So the goal we are trying to achieve here is we want to really bring personalized learning for everyone. And this is why we call it so when the teacher grades the assignment, it adapts to every single student's unique grading style. It adapts to every single teacher's unique teaching style and adapts to every student's unique learning style. So in terms of the grade, the feedback, it is different for everyone. And I recently actually saw this post, I think it's the news, on an AI school. There is actually a physical school right now that's leveraging heavily on AI to teach the students. And what they did is that they replaced all the classrooms with all the classes as using an AI to teach the students. Now, students still go to the class physically, but then the teacher's role is no longer teaching the students. They, facilitate discussions, events, activities to help students with creativity, like drawing, building, developing. So these are the things that it's difficult for the AI to teach. But AI is doing what it's best at, is feeding you these fixed information, but in a more personalized way. So the way that school specifically is how they're using AI is they give a personalized AI tutor to every single student. And that AI tutor adapts to the student's specific learning pace, their learning style. Like, are they more of a visual learner? Are they more of a real life example learner? So it adapts to them. And there's no grades per se in that school because everyone just learn at your own pace, which I think is how Katie mentioned is how are we moving away the grades to define your success? Because your success really a lot of times is not defined by your grades, right? You can do well in an exam, but you end up working as a normal employee.
Yeah.
But a lot of the great minds, great entrepreneurs, they didn't even attend school, but they can be so successful because they're they are master of the skills that are not taught in schools. That's like creativity thinking, that's leadership, that's your ability to overcome these challenges. Because building startup, doing it myself for a long time, it is difficult. And a lot of the founder or advisors joke around. They say that for anyone who want to build a startup, don't do it. I mean, it's just the fact that it is difficult, but I think it is fun. It is really fulfilling to be in this process because these are the things that I don't learn in school. And I think it is going to be super important for me to grow and for anyone else, I think, moving forward in this era of AI. Yeah.
Right. Hang Chong, from an educator's perspective, how do we balance this? On one hand, the global economy is competitive. On the other hand, we want students who are thinkers, not just workers. How do we navigate that tension?
Well, I'll echo what Jack has mentioned before in terms of relooking at our education system. I recall in school, it's mostly still subject-based route learning. We have high stakes exams. But we know that real-world challenges cannot be compartmentalized in subjects as well. So while we do need subject matter experts in certain jobs, but we also need people who can understand systems thinking, which is what I learned during my favorite subject, geography. At the moment, I've read about how people are proposing what is known as big history learning, learning about the evolutionary history all the way back from the Big Bang and looking at the trends towards how the universe started, how humankind, or even before humankind, how life on Earth happened. Because it's only by understanding these bigger trends and not just a very narrowly defined period of cultural history or political history, then we can actually create understanding on a global connection, to how there's no planet B at the moment that we live in. Otherwise, when we talk about competition by nation states, this is where most of our current conflicts happen because of this otherness, right? Of having to be more competitive than us. But why can't we collaborate as a humankind? I think that's where we need to move towards. And in my field of ecological literacy, we are facing a situation that people are disconnected from nature, right? And in my school, we learned about this Chinese idiom, 饮水思源, right? When you drink from a well, do you appreciate where the water comes from? But in Singapore, we are so privileged, right? We expect the lights to work. We don't know where the water comes from. We no longer hunt or fish. And essentially, we have lost that connection, even though we are still dependent on them for our basic needs, right? Just like in the concept of what does a Bumiputra actually mean, being a son of the soil. You naturally, when you get your resources from the land, you will take care of the land, quite simply. But now we seem to have a sense of entitlement. I mean, more recently, our article talked about how Singaporeans would rather others clean up for them rather than to clean up after ourselves. And in this way, there was another view that all education is primarily environmental education. I mean, I studied economics in school. And at no point does it talk about limits to growth, right? It always assumes that we have infinite resources, but that's not true anymore. We know that there are planetary limits, and there are new ways of defining how can we have a better life without excessive consumption from our capitalist system. And by respecting them, there's this newer concept known as donut economics. How do we live within what sustains us and creates the kind of fulfillment or happiness for all?
Thank you, Hang Chong. I totally agree with what you said. Singapore brands itself as a smart nation. Education is at the heart of that theory. Harry, remarkably, you're trying to replicate and even improve on human grading. What role do you see AI playing in the classrooms of the future?
This question is heavily debated on. It's almost on the same level of whether AI will replace jobs. Because when you bring AI to classrooms, and I actually see these conflicts happening between teachers, sometimes even within the same school. Some teachers were very open to it. They're like, I use ChatGPT myself all the time to, suggest me how can I feedback my students, how can I grade. The teacher are already doing this. And then there are some teachers are just extremely resistant to the idea. They're like, I'm the teacher, I'm the expert at this. AI could not replace me, and AI could not capture the nuance that I usually provide my students with. Which both sides are correct, but I think we could ultimately find this optimal balance, because we should treat AI as an assistive tool rather than it's a holistic thing that replaces teachers entirely. How I see it to be placed, or use of AI to be placed in classroom, is that it's going to assist the teachers to make the classroom more efficient. Because usually when you teach a class of students, 30 to 40 students, everyone has a different view on that. And even if the teachers say, okay, you split into groups, you have a discussion within yourself, you usually only get very limited time for everyone to share the idea. But with the AI, you can achieve the goal of making everyone to share that. And I was talking to one of the teachers from Raffles Institute. I'm not sure if you want me to mention his name, but he is I would say he's a pioneer in terms of education technology. And as a teacher himself, he constantly try out these new AI tools. And he's not even a developer. He doesn't study CS. He actually self-taught CS. And then he built all these AI tools to test in the classroom, which he find many successes. One example he told me about is that you can place a recording device at each discussion group within the classroom. It captures every single student's point of view. And the AI will summarize that, categorize it, and then display it on the board. So now in a classroom with limited time, you can allow every single student to share their voice. And you can use AI to pair people with similar views or contrasting views purposely to let them have more deeper discussion. So I think this is one very good example of how AI can be utilized in the classroom. And then you can look at the student side. Students right now get limited support from the teachers because, again, limited time, limited resources. So now if you can have a system that can support students whenever they need it, even outside the classroom, they can still get the same knowledge from their teachers that's aligned with their school curriculum, even if they're not in school. Now, this infinitely makes studying easier for students, because what the students struggle with the most is that when they're at home, there's no tutors, no one to help them. That's why in Singapore and in China, in Korea, people pay so much for private tuitions. Like the amount of money going to private tuition is crazy. Like in Singapore alone, the tuition market is beyond you can imagine. It's like as big as a country that's like multiple size of Singapore. So with AI, we can significantly reduce the cost of this private tuition for students to learn at home. And is that you can make it much more accessible to countries where private tuition is not widely adopted. So I think this is how AI can potentially play in the classroom setting.
I see. But with tech comes a deeper question, accessibility. Hang Chong, how do we ensure students from all backgrounds can benefit from high-tech education, not just those with privilege?
Well, insofar as digital literacy is concerned, I do know that IMDA has different schemes for those who are economically disadvantaged to get the devices and the laptops that they need in school. But otherwise, I think nothing actually replaces experiential learning. And this is where, for me, as a scout for 10 years in school, nature may be the best educator out there, actually. Yeah. So at this moment, there is actually interest in this practice known as the forest school, where kids are allowed an environment of unstructured play. They are allowed to make their own rules. They are allowed to manage any potential conflicts by themselves. And basically, they learn about community by themselves, right from the very, very start. And kids being kids, when you do not segregate them in any way, unlike before when, they are either streamed or, even put perhaps in special schools, they can recognize each other's strengths and help one another in an outdoor environment. So I think we certainly definitely can consider how outdoor education can also be an important part of the learning curriculum other than digital literacy, which I also acknowledge is a very powerful tool, be it AI, machine learning, and so on.
I see. I agree with what you shared. Jack, while we look at futuristic classrooms, you've always emphasized the basics: sanitation, infrastructure, dignity. How should we remember the fundamentals while pursuing innovation?
So, first of all, if we think about the Singapore context, then I think we should start to realize that pressuring your child to force them to learn, and they kind of hate learning after a while, and it's actually very destructive. In fact, after exam results come out, you always see sometimes suicide, somebody jump off the flat. Is it really good that our educational system actually create trauma, depression, mental illness? And for the parent who love the child, I feel very sad that because they love the child, they want to destroy the mental health of their child unintentionally, but actually they are doing that, like heavy tuition and all this. So for me, the advice to the parents is do not destroy your child. Make them grow up to be happy people, learning passionately, and also useful people. And therefore, character building is very, very important. If we think about who is the greatest teacher in the world, I would agree that it is nature. Nature is 3.7 billion years old. This teacher knows everything. And the nature has also solved the economic balance of society. If you go to nature, there's no bank account, there's no cupboard to store things, there's no holding of wealth, no refrigerator. So you do not see overweight animals. You do not see animals that just overconsume. And whatever you can consume is in abundance and you can get it. So maybe in the future, we should not define success as having the most dollars, but actually a billionaire should be defined as somebody who improved the life of a billion people. And a millionaire, somebody who improved the life of a million people. In this case, you unlock the love part rather than the fear part. Education should not be fear-based. It should be love-based. And if we are able to do that, then actually having a lot of money and not sharing becomes very antisocial. So what we would like to say is that go to the balance equilibrium rather than go to the extreme. Extremely poor, we're going to help them to get out of poverty. And extremely rich, let's start to think you have enough and try to help the rest. I think that the next marketplace for jobs is actually the 4 billion low-income people in the world, where we can actually bring all our technology, resources, intelligence, compassion, and business model to make the 4 billion low-income people, we call them poor people in the global south, to become middle-class people. And when everything is balanced, it will look like the forest because we all consume just what we need and not more than that. In fact, coming to the shit analogy, because as Mr. Toilet, I would say that in the forest, you eat the grass and then you shit on the floor, and your shit is taxation because it's a fertilizer that helps to fertilize to grow more grass for other animals to eat. And if we can understand this taxation system, it's very, very universal. I think we have good model in nature, and we should start to come back to our senses that what is human existence for? I think it is an existence for enjoyment and not for stress.
Right. The future is arriving fast. From AI disruption to climate change, the skills of tomorrow are shifting. Hang Chong, what do you think are the must-have skills for Singapore's youth, and how do we amp them in education?
Well, this reminds me of an incident I was back in school where I was seated like everyone else in a school hall for an assembly session, and my principal then, Mr. Tofi San, came out and asked all of us, did anyone notice that the fans weren't switched off? So what was his point? His point is that we had like an entire cohort of very conforming, obedient students who didn't dare to take it upon themselves to be more observant and actually do something about their own situation. So if we continue to have a society or very well-trained sheep, so to speak, then we definitely won't be resilient enough for the new world and the new challenges ahead. It's just like the little girl who knows what's happening after the tide or the sea level recedes, right? It's a sign that the tsunami might actually be coming. So from there, that was probably one of the most important lessons I learned from my school principal of how can you be observant to understand trends. And the next thing is, do you have the initiative to take action, right? Lead from the front if need be. So these are still essential skills, be it leadership, be it critical thinking. I was glad that I learned debating very early on in school, and this helped me be able to form my own thoughts, be able to discuss pros and cons of certain challenges. I think this will put students of the future in good stead. And one thing I also realized is that while our education system teaches us to get good jobs, but at no point did they actually teach me how to spend the money that I'm supposed to earn from all these jobs. But I'm glad to hear that I think more and more we do have programs that actually get students to actually learn about financial literacy. Because I did read an article where kids nowadays, because they don't handle cash at all, so I know everything's digitalized. They may not so-called feel the pain of spending, and in a very privileged society, this can be a quite a challenge because again they're disconnected from the resources that makes the world go round. So at the end of the day, where we have a whole generation of so-called dragon babies, each child becomes so precious. I hear from educators that where in the past, yes, we may have an authoritarian education system that no student talks back. But on the contrast, when you have a situation where students do not know how to relieve their stress, when there's a lot of cyberbullying around, and again coming back to nature. It's been said that being outdoors is therapeutic as well, right? In Ireland, they have legalized nature therapy as one of the forms of medical help. So in that way, I think in the school system, definitely these are the type of skill sets that will put the student in good stead. Being more resilient rather than too overly protective. Yeah, too overly protective. I cite you another example where I was an outdoor educator at one point. If it ever starts, even just to have a few drops of rain, I'll have a Singaporean kid will tell me, "Oh, sure, it's gonna rain." Like they expect the session will stop. But I was in an international school with another international school student having students on a challenge rope course, and we didn't stop even when the rain came. Right, we actually only stopped when the lightning alert siren came on. So there again is right where do we draw the line? Yeah, how do we put students, of course, not in dangerous situations, yeah, but situations where it's challenging enough that they can learn how to overcome challenges for themselves. I think that is the important thing. Yeah, so that whatever challenges comes next, they know that they can be independent enough or resilient enough, skillful, resourceful enough, yeah, to overcome these challenges.
Okay, thank you. Harry, your startup is a window into how education might evolve. Do you think AI graders like Remarkably could eventually become the new normal in schools? And if so, how do we ensure they complement, not replace human teachers?
Yeah, that's a very important question because our goal, even my startup, the goal is not to replace teachers. It is always to support them, empower them to, provide better service to their students. And the way we do it, I can give a bit more overview on how the system works. So basically, every time the teacher receives the essay assignments from the students, they can just process through the system, and then the system will analyze all the students' writing. It can be handwritten, it can be type out essays, and we'll be able to identify all the gaps in students' writing. That includes the standard grammar, spelling, punctuation, sentence structure, etc., like the normal ones you see in Grammarly, but also how sentences and paragraphs connect with each other, the idea development, etc. So traditionally, what the teacher would do is that they would take this essay, they would stare at the handwritten words and first try to figure out what does that word say. Especially for a primary school teacher, the handwritten is just all over the place. And we've seen some pretty terrible ones that it just almost unreadable. Now, in that sense, first of all, the AI is already helping the teacher to reduce that mental strings or eye strain of looking at terrible handwritten words. Because AI don't care about how ugly it is. As long as I can pick it up, I can pick it up. And we've designed the system such that it does it pretty accurately. So that's the first step that's helping the teacher. Again, this part, teacher would prefer that AI takes over the place, right? And the second part is the set grammar, spelling, punctuation, etc. Now, there are certain students' writing is good. There are not many mistakes. But some ones who are just beginners, it could be an English learner that comes from another non-English speaking country, or it could be just a primary school student. They make a lot of common mistakes. Like you're putting the comma in the right place. You're supposed to use a full stop instead of a comma. You're spelling the word incorrectly. You're using the wrong tense. You're using the wrong words. You're using is instead of are, etc. Now, all these small mistakes pile up. And if teacher were to draw out every single one of these it's going to take them forever. So what the teacher ended up doing is to skip a lot of these mistakes and just focus on what they want to teach or what they taught in the class. Then if the teacher are only providing these very minimal feedback and not everything, students sometimes will miss out on this mistake they're making. And they will think that, oh, this is not wrong, and then I can move forward with this, which is problematic because students don't get another chance to receive feedback on that. Unless say they practice at home, write an essay himself, grade himself. I doubt anyone would do that. So in this case, AI again is amplifying the teacher where it points out every single mistake that teacher could potentially miss or just don't have the time to point out. And then we tell student absolutely every single detail. So all these parts are the ones that are mundane for the teacher, and teacher actually want these to be optimized in a certain way. And that's where the AI comes in. And then you have the aspect where we do not want to replace teacher. Now, that's the teacher's unique grading style. Teacher give feedback to students very differently between different teachers, in fact, different schools, and even probably cultural backgrounds. Some teachers are more supportive. If you did something wrong, I want to encourage you. And certain teachers are strict and direct. If you did something wrong, I want to tell you directly, and I will probably penalize you for it. So it's two completely different pedagogy, but it both works. And it's proven academically that, it's just pedagogical difference. And that's something we want to preserve for the teacher, because we don't want to replace teachers in a way that they are now providing every single student with the same unanimous feedback across different grades, across different school. So the system what we're building, it can actually understand every single teacher's unique grading style, how they usually provide the feedback for the students, the length of the feedback, the tone of the feedback. And even what type of feedback they're picking up. Are they talking more on your use of grammar, use of sentence? Are they talking more about your idea development, the overall strengths and weaknesses of the essay? So these are the parts where we still preserve what the teacher can do. And the entire system is that it still allows the teacher to edit any feedback, edit any score, edit any comments. And in fact, we actually require the teacher to do that, because we always tell them that even though the AI is here to support you, it is not 100% accurate. And it can never be as good as how you always be into your students. So you always need to be the person who is validating the work, making sure that it aligns with how you usually teach your students before you pass it back to the students. So now the students receive an feedback or a report on their essay assignments that is one detailed, and it's very personalized to unique students. And on top of this, we also can keep track. And now, because everything is handled by AI, you can have very detailed analytics for every single student in terms of how they're performing, their trends in terms of their score, their overall strengths and weaknesses, what they're struggling about. And teacher get this dashboard to understand about their entire class. And even if they have multiple classes, they can see across different classes, how are different students in different class performing and across different assignments. And this is previously very difficult for the teacher, because again, when you're teaching 100 different students, you are unable to remember how every single student is performing, what's every single student struggling and what they're good at. And now AI enables this because it expands your brain capacity. It makes it that you don't need to remember all these mundane details, and it does all the analytics for you. So now what the teacher can do is that I can quickly go to the dashboard and I see, oh, this student is struggling. And everyone else is performing, say, around getting 80 out of 100. And this student is getting 50. Maybe I should put more time on this student. And he can go into that student, or she can go into that student and see, okay, this student is specifically good at this area and weak in these areas. And then I will help him specifically in these ways. Now that education and that teaching is way more personalized than if you were to not have AI support at all. So this is basically how we're ensuring that AI is complementing the teachers, but not to replace them.
Thank you. That was a very insightful sharing. Jack, stepping back, how do we prepare students not just for jobs, but for leadership in a complex, interconnected world?
I think that if we keep on thinking about AI, we're probably going the wrong track. And if we keep on thinking about examination and getting more marks and higher marks and gather marks, and then they graduate with a diploma or degree and they cannot find a job. That is the reality that we are trying in as far as this current school model. I think the better model will be to teach them literacy and numeracy until about secondary 2. By the time they are 14 years old, they understand how to calculate, how to describe things, how to express themselves. And then don't teach them anymore and let them teach themselves and teach each other. The rest will be by internship and by project-based, and ideally that each child by 16 actually graduated with either a company like what he's doing, but younger, because I think by 14 they can set up companies too. But let's say by 16, they would be able to either do a project and finish it very well personally. And I think we measure learning by doing rather than learning by grades. If you keep on doing grades, you will be teaching them useless things. And the problem with PISA score and QS rating and Times higher learning rating is that all these tools are belonging to the last century. And we are using the last century to measure and say, oh, Singapore ranking is very high. We are the best university. We have the best education system. We have the best rote learning system, which is robotic, which means that your child will be replaced by the robot. And what for? So I think we have to wake up and say, if children cannot do things and they have to wait for instruction and they have to guess what's the right thing, we have a problem. I went to the kibbutz school in Israel some 10 years ago, and I saw that 10 years old, 12 years old, they are running their own school, and the teacher and the principal, they are only facilitator, and they do not actually teach anymore. And I go to the democratic school where if you are secondary 3, you can say my mathematics is not good enough. I want to go to secondary 2 to learn my mathematics, but my science is at secondary 4. So you can actually jump classes at different level. And I think this personalized learning has to be chosen by them. And eventually, I hope that we would be one of the early people who changed educational system. And fortunately, the gumption of Mr. Tyler is now used as a school curriculum for character building in Fuhua Secondary School and in the process, Hwa Chong Institute. And I hope that we could teach gumption, teach character building, teach courage, teach imagination. And in the future, the person who can perform in society is somebody who understands every aspect and able to weave them together. In 2016, I studied in the Singularity University at NASA campus in Silicon Valley. We were there for 10 weeks on scholarship, and they teach us 200 technology. And at that time, I was like, wow, this technology in the future will replace all jobs. And where are all the jobs? And I came back to write this article in the Straits Times about 7 C's to survive the anti-job future. People read about it, but the educational system didn't change. And even today, Ministry of Education is still behind because they are so proud of the rote learning measurement, which is we are in the 21st century measured by 20th century measurement. We are in the wrong path. But we can say other countries are also the same. But why don't we change first?
I see. As we close, one theme stands out. Education is no longer just about exams. It's about preparing whole people, creative, critical, compassionate. So let me ask two of you, in 10 or 20 years, what do you hope Singapore's education system will look like? Perhaps since Jack just answered, Hang Chong and Harry can answer. 1 minute each.
I'll just take a stab at this because, I mean, based on my previous analogy about, how we perhaps during the times of educating a whole generation of obedient sheep that learns by rote learning and conformity, how can we have a society or lions instead? Because as a lion city, you will only have brave, resilient lions who are guided, with moral development, but also placed in challenging situations where they are not overly protected, as I say. Because if the system have overly protected parents and teachers who, because of systems, are afraid to, push the boundaries, afraid of failure. I think that's one of the things that has always hindered Singapore. And when will we see the next Simon Hu or even the Jack Sim, who are senior entrepreneurs? Hopefully, it will not take 2 more generations for that to happen. So my vision for Singapore will be something very much like what Jack mentioned. I've read about the democratic school as well. So that's truly, to me, radical, where people are empowered to take charge of their own learning, and not be fixed into a system. I recall in my time, I wanted to do biology, but only the top 3 classes could do biology. Why can't we have a better choice for ourselves? Thank you.
Thank you. Harry, would you like to go?
I think in 10, 20 years, education landscape is going to change quite drastically. I'm 100% with Jack. We are measuring a 21st century students with 20th century education measurement. Like, I think education is broken. And I'm not the only person saying this. Many people say this. It's controversial, but I think we need to adapt. Adapt to, a more personalized learning and a learning journey that's not only defined by grades. And I think even professors at NUS, some of my professors personally, I think they're already making this change. Just last year, the standpoint on AI was unanimously, if you use AI, you are plagiarizing. You are going to get penalized. You will face, trouble. But this year, just a year later, the teachers were like, okay, you can use AI, but just cite it. Just tell us that you used AI so we know that you did. And I think this is going to change drastically moving forward 10, 20 years down the road, because students are going to have way more access to education that they do not have before. People, can't afford to go to school. Now they can do it just with a phone or a laptop. So I think education is changing, and I'm happy to see that.